Good evening. Hope you're having a good day. We're going to continue our discussion about the morning according to Jewish tradition. What's the morning supposed to look like? We discussed at length the importance of getting up right away, the importance of being bold, not to easily get discouraged when people make fun of you or somehow laugh at any type of good things that you do. We discussed the importance of gratitude, that when you wake up in the morning, the first thing you should do is acknowledge that you're alive. Thank God for giving you your life back, etc. And today we're going to continue a little bit more, but more specifically, what happens while you're sleeping? Spiritually, what happens to your body, or more accurately, what happens to your soul while you're sleeping? I'm just going to continue and mention, it's the summary of the Code of Jewish Law. And he brings here that if a person is able to, he should get up at midnight to do something that's referred to as tikkun chatzos. It's not common, it's not really done today, but many, many years ago, this was a regular custom. People would get up at midnight and mourn the destruction of the temple. There's something special about post-midnight. There's a certain kindness that exists in the spiritual worlds. It's a time for prayer. We find a similar thing when it comes to before the high holidays. We do slichos, supplications, when we pray. It's also done post-midnight, early morning. Now, when it gets closer to the morning, like pre-dawn, that's known as the chesed of Avram. Avram, our ancestor, he's the ultimate of kindness. He was living his life always wanting to be kind and helping others, whether they were complete strangers or people that he knew, even bad people he wanted to help. We find that he sticks up for Sodom and Amorah. He tries to have them saved. Avram is the ultimate kindness. And that pre-dawn time is referred to as the kindness of Avram. It's a very auspicious time when it comes to evoking God's kindness. So he discusses here this old custom of people getting up at midnight to pray for Mashiach's coming, to mourn the destruction of the temple. And although we don't do that, he does mention that people that study Torah at night have special protection during the day. And as I mentioned, it's important to learn, actually this morning we were discussing this, it's important to learn Torah in the morning and learn Torah at night. But learning Torah during the night, I don't mean all night, but having some time to study Torah, and I know a great YouTube channel and Facebook that you could do that, but when you are listening, learning Torah at night, it gives you special protection during the day. One thing is for sure, although we don't get up for midnight, a person should get up early enough to prepare himself to be able to come to the shul and pray with a minyan. Regardless of when things get back to normal, this corona situation is over, whenever your job is, whenever you have to start your work, you could almost always find a minyan, at least in Chicago, that you could pray with a quorum of 10 people. Hashem, God, always listens to our prayers. You could pray anywhere, anytime. But there is a special emphasis and there's a certain quality of prayer being accepted when you pray in shul, in the synagogue, or when you pray with a minyan, with a quorum of 10. And when you're praying with a quorum of 10 with a minyan, that itself is very, very special. And a person should do that when he can. So what he's stressing here is that schedule your day in such a manner that you could wake up and have the proper amount of time that you need to get ready so that you could go and participate in these prayers and this davening. But let's talk about what happens while you sleep. Because when a person wakes up in the morning, he's like a new creation. You need to sanctify yourself, bring some holiness into your life, and wash your hands with a vessel. You may have seen this before washing for bread or for challah. We take a cup and we pour in a procedural, formal way. We pour 3 times on the right and 3 times on the left. That's how you wash your hands for bread. When it comes to washing hands in the morning after you wake up from your sleep, so we don't do 3 and 3, but we rotate. You take it in your right hand, a cup of water. It's called a kvart. It's a little bit larger than a cup. It has 2 handles. It's just a common way of using it. You don't need to have the handles, just easier. And you take it with your right hand, you fill it up with water, you give it to your left hand, and then you pour on your right hand once. And then with your right hand, you pour on the left hand. And you rotate 3 times, a total of 6 times you poured, 3 times in each hand. And that ritual process of 3 times in a rotation gives you a certain holiness, a certain sanctification. This concept is very similar to what was done in the temple in the Beis Hamikdash, and before that in the Mishkan, in the tabernacle, before the Kohanim, before the priests would serve Hashem, would offer sacrifices, certain prayers, etc., on behalf of the Jewish people. They always began their day with washing their hands and their feet. We don't do feet today, but we do wash our hands in this manner. And there's actually verses which refer to this concept that I'll wash my hands and surround myself or surround the altar of Hashem and to offer thanks and give gratitude. That's one reason that we want to do similar what was done in the temple. I'm starting my day, I'm going to serve God. We're going to do our mission, our purpose in this world, and hopefully we're going to have a holy day and try to be as proper as possible. So the way that this is done is we wash our hands before we start. But there's another reason why it's done. And this is a little bit more Kabbalistic, but the Code of Jewish Law, which is not Kabbalah, which is more of the revealed parts of the Torah, Jewish law, talks about it, and I'll share with you what he says. When a person goes to sleep, his soul leaves his body. Not 100%, but you're basically 1/60th dead. That's why a person's consciousness is asleep. They don't really hear things. If you make a loud noise, they'll hear you. They're not functioning in the proper way because their soul is in heaven and it's getting energy and nourishment and getting rest for the coming day. So what's really taking place while a person is sleeping is his soul left his body. Now, the moment your soul, which is holy, which is godly, which has spiritual energy, leaves your body, it's replaced automatically with impurities. And this is a principle which exists in everything. Whenever there's a vacuum, things will take its place. Whenever there's a void, things will take its place. So the way that evil spirits, impurities, negativity exists is through trying to siphon off whatever's left from the holy realms. So a soul is holy, it's in a body. When that soul leaves the body, all of a sudden, unholiness gets into it. Now, thankfully, when the soul comes back, the unholiness leaves. It gets pushed out. It's not its place. So when the soul comes back in the morning, whenever a person wakes up, the impurity leaves the body for the most part. It remains in your hands, from your wrist till the tip of your fingers, both hands. And because of that impurity, which is now there by default, because while you were sleeping, your soul left the body, replacing itself with impurity that wants to get some of the spiritual energy which is left over from the soul from during the prior day. So we wash our hands ritually. And we're very careful about this. We don't walk 4 cubits, which is a halachic measurement, which is about 6 feet. We don't walk 6 feet without washing our hands. Some people, they go straight to the bathroom, it's close enough to their bed, and they wash their hands. The Hasidic custom is not even to put your feet on the ground before washing your hands ritualistically. And what we do is, I should say, we take a big bowl of water, a shissel, a basin, picture like, dishes basin that you would use to wash dishes, something that size, and you put the kfart inside with water before you go to sleep. It's next to your bed. And when you wake up in the morning, before you actually get off your bed, you wash your hands. You lean over and you wash your hands. So to remind us what we spoke about yesterday, you wake up in the morning, the first thing you do is you acknowledge, you're grateful, you thank God that you're alive. Thank you for giving me back my soul. You're still in bed. You didn't check your phone. You didn't do anything else. This is the first thing you do. You're grateful. You start your day with appreciation. It adds so much to your day. And if you take the time and you think about what is it that you're saying and what you're actually grateful for, and you mean what you say, it will change your day. It'll change your mood. It'll change your day. It'll change everything. Because when you start your day with positivity, with gratefulness, it goes from there, and it snowballs in a positive way. You're not so easily irritable. You don't get so angry quickly. You don't easily get frustrated. There's something magical about starting your day with gratefulness. But once that's done, then you go and you wash your hands ritually before getting out of your bed. Now, if somebody gets up in the middle of the night, as long as it's after midnight, and midnight in halachic time, so halachic time consists of 12 hours during the day and 12 hours during the night. So in the winter, when you have a very long night, it's more than 12 hours. Let's say it gets dark at 4:30 and it gets light at 7:30, right? So you have 15 hours. So the 15 hours get divided, the minutes of the 15 times 60 gets divided in 12. And those 12 units is the new hour, and it could be 70 minutes to an hour, 80 minutes to an hour. I don't want to get into all the halachic times and how that works, but chatzos, midnight, halachically, which let's just say it's 12:40, 12:50, depending on the time of the year, is midnight. If you slept after midnight, you woke up at 2 a.m., you got to wash your hands as if it's the morning. If it was a nap before midnight, he's going to discuss soon what happens. In such a case, you don't need to wash your hands before you get out of bed. It's a midnight thing, which is the cutoff. When you get dressed, the first thing you should put on after your yarmulke, obviously, is your tzitzis for a man. Don't walk again 4 cubits without tzitzis. You wear tzitzis, you wear it all the time. We're careful that we even sleep with tzitzis. We don't make a blessing on tzitzis at night, but we sleep in tzitzis at night. Now, you can't make a blessing on the tzitzis yet because you're not really clean enough. You're getting dressed, you're involved, you went to the bathroom or whatever. You can't properly make the blessing. You do that later. But then he talks about the washing of the hands in the morning. When you wash your hands in the morning, it should be done correctly, okay? Which means with a cup in the rotating fashion, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And then a person should wash his face and wash his mouth. You're going to serve the King of all kings, God. And we take it serious. And just like before you would be talking to a king, you'd make sure to wash up, to rinse, to wash your face. We do that before we start making the blessings. Maida'ani, acknowledging and thanking God that you're alive, that he gave you your soul back. You do that right away in the morning. You don't waste any time. You do that before you wash your hands. But once you got up and you're getting ready to get dressed, and then you're going to say all the blessings, the Jewish law says you have to wash your face before you start making those blessings. It's respect, and it's the way to represent yourself, to present yourself to God. In addition, hopefully this is obvious, but a person has to rinse their mouth before they make blessings. We don't do this on a fast day, but on a regular day, a person should rinse their mouth, wash your face, rinse your mouth. Hopefully you do more than just rinsing or brush your teeth, etc., before you talk to God. Because it's a relationship, and it's more important for us than it is for him, but you have a certain attitude that you are addressing Hashem with, washing your face and you're washing your mouth. If you touch food before you washed your hands in the morning, that food becomes prohibited. It becomes impure. The impurity that we mentioned is in your hands when you wake up in the morning is transferable to food. And it'll impact that food. Now, if it's a little child, he says, you don't have to worry about it. If it's a child which has not yet reached the age of education. Now, you may ask me, what happens about adults? You go to the fruit store. Today we're very aware of these things and very conscious about hygiene and so on. But you go to the store, people are touching all types of food. And most people probably in the food store did not wash their hands ritually, right, etc. So the truth is that if someone washed their hands in any manner, that does work. You want to do it with ritually, it's the proper way, but you don't have to be worried about someone else that may have touched your food that doesn't know about this, doesn't keep to this, because hopefully an adult washed his hands and you're fine that way. But he stresses, a person should not touch his mouth. his nose, his nostrils, his eyes, his ears, all parts of the body. Don't touch it before you wash your hands when you wake up in the morning. There is a evil spirit that exists there on the hands, and you don't want to pass it on to others. It's interesting. Long before washing hands and personal hygiene was so important, specifically hand washing, in Jewish tradition, in Jewish law, this was underscored. It was a way to start your day. It's a fundamental aspect of what Jewish life teaches us. And it's fascinating when you find that in the Torah itself. In the year 1847, there was a terrible plague. And it was actually an infection. Such a terrible infection that basically any woman that got married, that had a child, I think 70% of women were dying within a few days or less from when they gave birth to that child. And they couldn't figure out what the problem was. They tried all different types of things. Women were afraid to go to hospitals. They were afraid to have babies. It was a terrible thing. They would have a child, and a little while later they would die. And there was one doctor, Ignaz Semmelweis. And this Semmelweis was living in Vienna at the time. And he came up with an idea. He said that the doctors that are dealing with the maternity ward and helping the women give birth to their children, what they're doing is they're starting off their day in the morgue. They're going to do autopsies and all different types of experiments and studies on the women that have died the day before. They're trying to figure out what may be the problem that women after they gave birth are dying, heaven forbid. And he went and tried to figure out what it was. And many doctors are doing that. They don't wash their hands because it was uncommon back then. And then they come into the hospital, the maternity ward, and they're helping women give birth. And their hands are infected from the diseases they're coming across of these dead bodies in the morgue and in the autopsy center. And they're transferring that to these women unknowingly, unwillingly, but they're not washing their hands. And he started implementing that people should wash their hands. Everyone laughed at him. Science, medicine, and tell me that washing hands is going to take it away. I mean, today we hear about it, it sounds like an obvious thing. And whoever says no is simply out of their mind. But when this doctor came up with it, when he discovered it, no one believed him. It was terrible. It was so bad that he literally went insane. He was in an asylum for a while, and then he died because of he actually made a clinic, and people that came to his clinic were surviving. The rates of death after childbirth went down dramatically. Eventually, it caught on, and other doctors understood. It's a discussion on its own why they didn't give it earlier and so on. But concept is that what's relatively new for society, several hundred years old, in Jewish law, in the Jewish thought and tradition, this has been fundamental forever. Washing hands. Now, they don't talk about it for the physical hygiene per se, but it's definitely a nice side effect and a benefit that we have as a result of that. It's fascinating that everything is in Torah. There's a story about a Rebbe, the Rebbe Maharash, the fourth Lubavitcher Rebbe, I believe, was sitting once at a meal. He actually washed his hands to eat the bread, and his son mentioned with great excitement that doctors just came out with a discovery that if you want to remember things well, you lift your head. Okay? There's a certain vein in the body that if you ask anyone to remember something, a phone number or whatever, very often they'll lift their head and say, 1 second, right? And they remember. Lifting your head helps your memory, and you can remember something that you're trying to recall. On the contrast, when you bend your head down, it helps you focus. If you want to think about something, try to understand an idea and delve deep into it, putting your head downwards helps that. It was a fascinating idea. And he shared it with the Rebbe, with the Rebbe Maharash, at the meal. And after he tasted from the bread, because you can't talk after you wash till you eat the bread, he asked him to wait. He went into his study, and he took out a book of manuscripts from the Tzemach Tzedek, from the third Lubavitcher Rebbe, and he opened it up and he showed him a discourse, Hasidic Maimer, where he brings there that in the head there is a vein, that when you lift your head upwards, it triggers something and it helps you recall things. And when you go down, it helps you go a little bit deeper and think more on a little bit of a deeper level when you put your head downwards. And the initial reaction is, wow, he must have been an expert in medicine. He must have had some kind of degree. He must have been really learned. But the answer is, that it's not that he was knowledgeable in medicine in the scientific sense of going to study medicine, but everything is in Torah. We don't understand it. We don't always see it, but all medical, everything in the world, frankly, is in Torah. And if you're knowledgeable enough, talking about a level of a Rebbe, a tzaddik, able to understand that they could see these things that's in Torah itself. I'll give you another example of that. When the Alter Rebbe was in prison, and he was visited by all different types of ministers. Now, there was a new phenomenon in Russia that just came out and really was only available to, let's just say, government officials, maybe academics. It was a map of the United States, map of America or United States. And the minister, I think it was the Minister of Education, came to the Alter Rebbe and he said, let me show you something. And he showed him this map. And as he shows it to him, he told him, there's a mistake here. And he pointed it out. Something with the coastline was off. One of the oceans, something was off somewhere. It turned out he was right. And they said, you must have access to this. Or maybe you've seen this before. How in the world do you know that? You were never in America. Even if you were, to know the map and know exactly, to see after. He explained. I don't know it from there. But in Torah, the Torah starts off, Bereshis, in the beginning Hashem created heaven and earth. The letter Beis has the whole world in it. And I know it's from the Beis. And I saw something was off there. So obviously we're not talking about a typical person. We're talking about a great tzaddik, someone that has divine powers, someone that has prophecy, divine inspiration, etc. But again, it's very cool, we'll call it, to see how modern discoveries or later discoveries have their source in Torah itself. I mean, find it in there, or great sages have shown it to us and told us about it. Maimonides is a great example, where the Rambam talks about a lot of things that are important to one's health. Now, some of these things change based on the generations. What was accurate 1,000 years ago for the way the body worked can change, and some of it doesn't change. Maimonides talks about the person should go to sleep on the left side. Don't sleep on your back, don't sleep on your stomach, don't sleep on your right side. It has to do with digestion and other things. He talks about what foods to eat in the summer months and what foods not to eat in the summer months, and many, many different things. The Rambam actually tells us that anyone that follows his protocol of diet and lifestyle, he guarantees them that they won't die from illness, unless they had something before, some prior condition, they were born with something. But if you follow this concept that the Rambam describes and talks about, he guarantees you that you won't die from illness. It's halacha, it's Jewish law, it's not some kind of medical book. The Rambam is saying it in a halachic way. I want to underscore that not all of those things apply today because the body does change over time. It's certain things that were good. For example, fasting was normal. Anyone that was seeking spiritual growth, anyone that was seeking deep levels of atonement, anyone that wanted to do introspection and grow, fasting was a typical thing. Today, as the Alter Rebbe and Chassidus discuss at length, it's not something we do because fasting weakens us. We're not strong enough. We can't go just start fasting every 3 days, eating only some bread and water at night. It's not going to work. I'm not getting into intermittent fasting. I'm a fan of that. I'm not telling you to go 42 hours or whatever without eating, but the 12-hour fast or the 16-hour fasts are definitely beyond the scope of this class. So back to what we're saying in regards to Jewish law. A person should be careful to wash their hands with this cup, okay? Using any cup. It has to be water that's coming at you from the strength of a human. Don't turn on the faucet and stick your hand under it. Take water and pour it on your hand. That pouring does something. And if you ask why, I'll ask you why. Why is ritual impurity even exist, and how does water take it away? It's not like it's a shower. But the fact is that it's a spiritual type of impurity, and the way to take it away is with water in a specific manner that gets rid of it. It's a spiritual thing. What happens if someone doesn't have water? He could use in a river or even snow, according to some opinions. But a person should make sure that he is washing his hands before he prays and so on. A person's body should be clean, which is a nice way of saying go to the bathroom before you start to pray. Wake up in the morning, a person should check themselves. We mentioned the Rambam, he speaks about it as well, that a person holding themselves in and not going to take care of their bodily needs and going to the bathroom is very unhealthy. The Rambam uses strong terminologies that it brings all different types of illnesses. A person should not delay his need to go and relieve himself. These are the times that a person has to wash their hands, halachically. Someone that gets up in the morning. Now, what happens if he didn't have a full night's sleep? Or it's not the night, you're sleeping during the daytime. So we discussed that if it passed midnight and you slept at least a half hour after midnight, then you need to wash your hands by your bed and so on. Don't walk 6 feet without washing your hands. If it was before midnight or you took a nap during the day, so if it was less than about a half hour, you don't even have to wash your hands at all. If it was more than a half hour, then you have to wash your hands, and you don't have to do it by your bed. You can walk 6 feet, 10 feet, whatever you want, to a sink and wash your hand ritually there, 3 on the right, 3 on the left, but rotating, 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. That's if you took a nap during the day for more than a half an hour, or it was before midnight. 9 p.m., you slept till 10, you should wash your hands when you get up. Not at your bed, but you should wash your hands. Someone that goes out of the bathroom or the bathhouse, if you cut your nails, one needs to wash their hands. Someone gets a haircut, they have to wash their hands. If you take off your shoes with your hands, you wash your hands. Shoes have a certain type of impurity in them, certain type of, we'll call it dirt, and therefore, if you take off your shoes with your hands, you should wash your hands afterwards. In general, someone that touches parts of his body or her body that are usually covered, you should wash their hands. Sweat, bodily sweat, besides from your face, revealed parts of your body, your hands, are, in Hebrew it's called sam hamaves, which is a deathly poison. Bodily sweat should not be consumed. A person shouldn't eat it. You should be very, very careful. So not that anyone wants to eat it, but you wash your hands when you touch it. So someone touches parts of their body that's usually covered, Jewish law tells us that he has to wash his hands. Someone that goes to a cemetery, when you leave the cemetery, you wash your hands. And someone that is at a funeral should do that as well. It's, again, I'm going to stress, it's not a hygienic thing as much as it's a spiritual thing. But the parallel is it's so hard to not mention that component, especially today with coronavirus and people really washing their hands multiple times, being very, very, very careful about it. It's something which it's amazing to see that we have it in Torah itself. The next section that we're going to talk about is about modesty. Modesty, not in the sense of don't be arrogant or don't be a big shot, but modesty in the sense that the way that you dress, the way that you walk around in your own home, the way that you act, even when you're not on display, should be one that's modest, that it's respectful. That technically, if someone sees you that way, it would be okay. And therefore, when a person gets dressed or undressed, he needs to be careful that it's done in a modest way. Don't walk around without clothes, even in the seclusion of your own room. Be modest. Remember that God is with you in your room, and your conduct matters and should be appropriate. A person should take off their pants while they're covered. We're not talking about if they're in the bathroom or if they're in the room, they should do it that way. As the verse says, that Hashem sees you anywhere, even in darkness. Okay, so Don't think I'm in a room within a room, nobody can see me. Hashem sees you. And therefore, the holy way of living is that you behave in a modest way as if someone else is there. Someone else, in this case, God, is there. When a person behaves with modesty, with a certain level of self-nullification and not bashful, it leads to a special relationship to Hashem, a special holiness. Friends, we're going to conclude here. I wish you a wonderful evening. If you have any questions, please ask, comment, share, like. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. One other quick thing. If you have any particular topics that you'd like to hear, it would be my honor to address them. Gute Nacht, good night, spokojnej noci, Laila Tov, Bonne noche.